I love old drum gear. Every piece tells a story, but there's something I've learned and I always ask myself, is it special enough for a chance at a new life? And if so, have years of neglect, abuse, and abandonment left it in such a state of decay that it's beyond my abilities for revival? Or I don't work for a drum company, but I've fixed up and restored a lot of drums. A Tama Swing Star, a Ruther, Pearl Export. I've unwrapped like 4 no-name kits. This 1967 Ludwig Hollywood kit was completely destroyed. A 4-piece Pearl Super Deluxe. Unwrapped, sanded, and cut the toms down of this mid-90s Premier. Something like 15 snare drums. Somewhere over the years, I just fell in love with old drums. Generally, the older the drum is, the more rare it is, so there's less of a chance of somebody else having that same drum in their setup. There are unique combinations of woods and materials that aren't produced anymore. Being unique is a good thing. Depending on the condition, these drums can be found for very little money. It's fairly rewarding to fix something up that was complete trash and make it into something awesome. Needless to say, when I bought a kit on Craigslist for 50 bucks and the owner threw in this 16-inch floor tom, which looks to me as if it's a vintage Slingerland that's been spray painted black, I was equal parts excited and horrified. So against my better judgment, I'm going to try and restore this thing. I've never removed paint from a wrap before, so it might end in horrible disaster, but I had a serious conversation with the floor tom in which it told me that if it ends up dying, it's okay, because life as it is now just is not worth living. All right, so I've got the drum on my operating table here in a location that will be easy to clean up. My default is a creepy basement, and first thing I'm gonna do is throw on some clothes that I don't mind getting destroyed. And now let's get some materials. Some stripping pads, rubber gloves, some work gloves, eye protection, Q-tips, a drum key, crescent wrench, screwdriver, pliers, paintbrush, and a couple rolls of paper towel. All right, let's break this thing down and see what the shell looks like without the hardware. You know, it's funny, in 1998, I was getting ready to play a jazz gig with a trio in a restaurant, and a lady came up to us and she was holding a clipboard looking really concerned, and I asked, you know, is everything okay? And she said, oh yeah, I just, is there any way to change the color of your drums? I was playing my Wine Red Masters Custom at the time. I just looked at her and smiled and said, no. Apparently, whoever painted this maybe took the bait on that one, huh? A few lug casings, a little stubborn, they're kind of stuck on here. And I usually just kind of knock them off. If anything, hopefully the paint flakes away. Obviously, whenever you do something like this, there's a risk of damaging the drum, so you want to be careful, and I'm just barely tapping here with the rubber side of this pliers. And that was enough to lift it right away. I've also had some success coming in from the other side, so I'm not touching the drum shell at all with like a screwdriver and just tapping the screwdriver really lightly. Sometimes that'll pop it out too. Right, so now that the hardware is off of the shell, we can look at stripping the paint off of this plastic wrap. A few different kinds of stripper out there, some that are pretty hardcore, some that are maybe a little less hardcore. Just like with any product, you start researching it online and someone will say, oh yeah, this worked great for me, and then a few posts down, someone is like, are you insane? That destroyed my drums. So it's a little bit of a rolling the dice here. I decided on this guy, 3M's safest stripper. So we're gonna give that a whirl. And another thing I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna lay down some ankle weights. And garbage bag. This is probably going to be a little messy. And that's just going to stop this from really getting away from you here on the table. And I'm just going to go a couple of these sections at a time. Cool, so I'm going to cover this so it doesn't dry out on me, and I'll keep an eye on this and see how it does. There's no odor coming from this. I know this says it's safe to breathe, it's safe to have on your skin. Obviously, I'd rather err on the side of caution with that, and there is a fan ventilating this area as well. It's been exactly 20 minutes and I'm starting to see some crackling in the surface. That's a good sign. My weapon of choice here is going to be this old bank card. I think it's going to give me a little bit more control than a plastic putty knife or say even an old spatula that's maybe a little softer. So let's see if we get any paint off of here. Is that blue? There's actually blue, pink, and black paint. So this thing has been repainted multiple times. Just barely touching on here. Whatever's not ready to come off, I'm not going to force it. So for the hardware, I'm going to use a little bit more powerful paint stripper because we're not worried about protecting a plastic wrap underneath. And I'm going to do this over the sink because eventually we're going to want some water and it's going to be a little less messy. These guys are going to take a bath in here for about 8 hours, and that should melt all of this paint right off of the chrome plating. Now for these cool old stick saver hoops, let these guys sit for about 8 hours too. The paint stripper definitely dulled the shine of the wrap a little bit, so although I don't normally do this, I'm going to use a little bit of car wax to get back that shine. Let's get the hardware put back on. According to the badge, this guy's from anywhere between 1963 and 1969. I always put on just a tiny bit of lightweight oil. So, can it be saved? Yes, but it was a fair amount of work. If you're looking at doing the same thing to one of your drums, I've itemized every product I used as well as every single step I took in the description below.